Unit 1 Notes, Introduction to Piecewise Functions. A piecewise function is a function that is made up of two or more pieces of a different function. So, for example, we have f of x is equal to negative x squared plus 4 if x is less than 3, and x minus 2 if x is greater than or equal to 3. So this piecewise function consists of two expressions. We have the first expression here that is a quadratic, and then the second expression here, which is linear. What we're going to do for each of these is we are going to find the domain and range in both interval and set builder notation. So looking at number 1, we are looking at the domain, so left to right. So just like when we did domain at the beginning, and we were looking from left to right, we're still going to pay attention to those open circles, closed circles, and arrows. So here's the left all the way to the right. Okay. Notice I don't have to stop it here because these 2 points, the closed circle and the open circle, share the same x value. And since one is open and one is closed, the one that's closed is going to override the open one. Okay, so if we're just looking from left to right, notice they have arrows on both sides, so that's going to be infinity, negative infinity to infinity. Okay, and if we were to write that in set builder notation, that would be x such that x belongs to the real numbers. Now looking at range, we have the minimum value here at negative 4, and then it goes all the way up to positive infinity because of those arrows. So we have from negative 4 to positive infinity. Since that negative 4 is on a solid line, then that means we have a bracket around the negative 4. So this is saying all numbers bigger than negative 4. So y such that y is greater than or equal to negative 4. Okay. Now looking at number 2. Again, notice how this open circle and this closed circle share the same x value of negative 2. Since they share the same x value, this closed dot is going to override that open dot, meaning this whole section here is included. Okay, so we have from our left to our right. Notice how we have arrows on both sides, so that is going to be from negative infinity to positive infinity. And that's the same as saying x such that x belongs to all real numbers. Now looking at the range, we have the bottom to the top. So some of you might think that this stops right here at negative 1. But since we have this arrow, it's going to keep surpassing that in both directions. So again, our range is going to match our domain with that negative infinity to positive infinity. And we would write that as y such that y belongs to the real numbers. Okay. Let's look at example 3. Okay, example 3, notice again how these ones share the same x value, which means that since one is closed and one is open, they are now both included. So looking at the domain, we're going to look from left to right, and notice how that hits on 2 open circles. So that means these are not included. So we use the parentheses. So it's going to be parenthesis negative 4 to 5, close parenthesis. So if we were to write that as a set builder, then that tells us that x is between negative 4 and 5. So we would write x such that x such that negative 4 is less than x less than 5. So doing range now, looking top to bottom, Notice that it stops there at -5 and then goes all the way up to 4. Again, on open circles, so that means it is parentheses. So we do -5 comma 4, parentheses on both. And that means our y value is between those two values. So y such that -5 is less than y less than 4. Okay, now looking at number 4. Okay, again, looking at these dots here. Notice how, again, they share the same x values. One is x equals 1, and when x is 0 and when x is 2. Okay, so looking at number 4, again, these two share the same x values. So since one is closed and one is open, the closed overrides the open, so that means this whole section is included. So looking at the domain, we see to the left, -4, and then to the right, the arrow goes into the positive direction, so positive infinity. So -4 to infinity. And notice on that -4, it's an open circle, so it's going to be a parenthesis. So this is saying all numbers bigger than -4, so x such that x is greater than -4. For the range, looks like it stops here at -1, and then because of that arrow, it's going to go up to infinity. Since that -1 crosses at a closed dot, it's going to be included, so it's going to be bracket -1 to infinity. This is saying all numbers bigger than -1, so y such that y is greater than or equal to -1. Okay, same here with number 5. We have our domain with the arrows on either side. So that's going to be -infinity to infinity. And we write that as x such that x belongs to all real numbers. And then the range is going to be similar because we have those arrows going in either direction. So it's going to be -infinity to positive infinity, where y such that y belongs to the real numbers. Okay. Again here, notice they're sharing the same x value. One is closed, one is open, which means that whole section is included. So looking at the domain, we can look at either end here with the arrows, and that's telling us -infinity to positive infinity, or for set builder, x such that x belongs to the real numbers. And then for range, we have that it starts here at -2, and it goes all the way up to infinity because of that arrow. And since that -2 has an open circle, we know that it's not included, so parentheses, so -2 to infinity. And this is another way of saying all numbers bigger than -2, so y such that y is greater than -2. And then we have number 7 over here. Again, notice this, one closed, one open, sharing the same x value. Looking at the domain, looks like one end has that arrow, so it's going off in the left direction, which is -infinity. And then if we look over to the right, it looks like it stops at 3 with a closed circle, so it's going to be a bracket. So this is telling us all x values smaller than 3. So x such that x is less than or equal to 3. And then range, we have the bottom here at -2, which is included. And then similar with the domain, we have that arrow now going up, so it's going to positive infinity. So we have -2 to positive infinity. -2 had that closed circle. That's why it is a bracket. And this is saying all numbers bigger than -2. So y such that y is greater than or equal to -2. And then last example here. Again, notice this. They're sharing the same one, which means that section is included. And then looking at the domain, left to right, we have one open, one closed. So we have an open at -4, so parenthesis -4, and closed at 3, so 3 bracket. That means all numbers between -4 and 3, so x such that -4 is less than x less than or equal to 3. Notice that the less than or equal symbol is attached to the number that has the bracket. Okay, and then last thing, looking at the range, we have here at -2 up to +3. Notice that that -2 here crosses through a solid line, so that means it's included, and the 3 crosses through a solid dot, so again, included. So 2 brackets here, bracket -2, 3 bracket. So all numbers between -2 and 3. So we say y such that -2 is less than or equal to y less than or equal to 3. And again, they both have the less than or equal to because both of them have the bracket on the interval notation.